It's November 23rd. Welcome back to the Squashcast. I'm your host, Rob Beaumont, joined once again by Jesse Engelbrecht.
Hi Rob, hi everyone. Yeah, looking forward to dissecting the Qatar Classic, which recently just finished. Great event. Just looking at it, Karim Abdelgawad, current world champion, managed to take the title, the number 3 seed, beating Mohamed Shorbagy in the final. We'll have a little look more through the event coming up, but interesting. We did a bit of a prediction at the semi-final phase. I got it totally wrong again. So if any players out there want me to make a prediction against them, I'm sure you can slip me a bit of money and I'll make sure that the other person loses if I predict it. So I did predict Daryl, I think, in the semi-final. Just looking at how well he's been playing recently, I thought he would be a good shout for it. Really nice of him to give us a little retweet as well. We did kind of capture his name in our Twitter, and he retweeted. And then after Daryl went out, I then thought it would be Mohamed Shorbagy, and again I got that wrong. So great for the current world champion Karim Abdelgawad to win that event. Rob, what do you think of the event as a whole?
Yeah, it was a fantastic event. This was one of the most competitive tournaments of the season so far. And talking those predictions, I was correct first time this time. First time I've been correct all season, I think. So only going to get better from now. So we'll start with round 1, and round 1 and 2 weren't the most exciting of the year, but if we look at some of the matches of interest from round 1, we had Diego Elias took Mohamed Elshorbagy to 5. He was in your list of top up-and-comers for this season.
Yeah, it looks like he just needs that bit of a breakthrough result. He's been really knocking at the doors in the last few tournaments, and taking Mohamed Shorbagy to 5, losing 11-5 in the fifth 63-minute battle. Yeah, maybe a bit of a tough draw for him, but hopefully he can have that little breakthrough soon. I've no doubt, whether it's this season or next season, that he'll be able to break through pretty soon.
Yeah, and also we had James Willstrop against Chris Simpson. This started out quite a close match with Chris taking the first game, but in the final game, James just seemed incredibly ruthless and bageled him, which you don't see very often on the tour, especially with American scoring.
Yeah, no, James, I think, is that man with a new lease of life now. He's really got back into his stride, and I saw somewhere, I think it was on Twitter again, that like people were kind of questioning why he bageled him, and I think James was really nice. Said, well, that's the amount of respect he had for Chris Simpson. You're not going to take anyone lightly, and not necessarily going out to maybe bagel him in the front of his mind, but he probably just played every point as well as he could. And eventually the scoreboard was an 11-love, and I think any professional in that situation would do the same. I can imagine Chris was a little bit off, but then James was like, you know what, I'm not even going to let myself get drawn into a slogfest, and just closed it out. Looking at the another first round match, the Qatari Abdullah Al Tamimi, took Nick Matthew to 5 games. Really top match that I managed to watch bits of it, and Nick was very gracious in victory, saying that actually he didn't deserve to win on the day. Nick was kind of complimented Al Tamimi, saying he was the better player, and Nick basically got a bit lucky, inverted commas, but I think that's Nick, who he is. He's able to kind of get those wins out of those situations. So great for the local Qatari to really take Nick all the way, and the crowd was fantastic at that point, really getting behind him, and lots of cheers and hooping and hollering. So great to see that, but again, it would have been nice to maybe see Al Tamimi progress around.
Yeah, that match taking 71 minutes, and the biggest gap in the scoring was the second game at 11-8, so everything else went to 2 clear at least. The final game from the round 1 that we're going to talk about is Daryl Selby beating Omar Mossad, and I really wanted your opinion on this as to why you think Omar Mossad's just sort of fallen off over the last few months.
Hard to put an exact answer to that, Rob. I think I probably like to credit Daryl more than Mossad not quite being on. Yes, okay, Mossad hasn't quite kicked on. I had some big predictions for him at the start of the season. I thought he would, arguably get him to world number 2 and 1 at one point, but I just don't know. He just doesn't seem to be kind of hitting his targets. He doesn't seem to be playing the big points as well as he could. And someone like Daryl is, again, like James Willstrop, an elder statesman in the game, an English player that's kind of almost coming to the autumn of his career, but doing fantastically well, really expressing himself. And I think someone referred to him the other day as the white Rami, which is quite nice to see. And he's got that real relaxed style, and just he's really comfortable with his game at the moment, moving the ball all around. And I suppose almost the modern game suits Daryl. Maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, Daryl was very expressive and moving the ball around, and maybe it didn't reward him as much. But now that the game is that much more open, I think it's actually playing into Daryl's hands. He's able to initiate and move the ball to the front and make the most out of it. So yeah, looking forward to seeing how he progresses after the Christmas time period. But in regard to Mossad, tough one. I'm sure he's going to take a bit of time out over the Christmas period, reflect. Yeah, he's got some tournaments on, obviously, but I think he needs to maybe change a few things if he wants to kind of reach the heights that he did last season.
Yeah, we can only hope for the best for him coming forward. If we just skip to round 2, not a great deal of upsets here. In fact, I think every game went along with the seedings as you would have predicted, other than Gregoire Marche beating Tarek Momin in 5. The match I want to highlight is, I think I've done this in a previous podcast, is Wilstrop versus Rosner, because I don't know what it is about this fixture. It always seems to be exciting. Even though this was only 3 games, it was just a really solid, tough match.
Yeah, as we know, not much space left on the court once those two boys take to it. They're both looking to dominate the middle, volleying a hell of a lot. And yeah, Rosner just looked sharp. Okay, the games were 11-7, 11-7, 11-8. So, a couple more points in James's favor, or played the big points a bit better. He might have nicked it 3 love, but credit to Simon, really hitting his straps kind of towards the end of the year. I just want to go back a step and mention Gregoire Marche. Looking at his first round, he battled through a big 5-setter against Mohamed Abulgar in 54 minutes, then backs it up against Tarek Momin, a 76-minute 11-9 in the 5th win. And again, looking one round ahead of that, he took Nick Matthews to 5, just lose by, he lost the last game pretty convincingly, but an 85-minute match. So, the young Frenchman really looking to stake his claim and maybe take the mantelpiece over from Greg in the near future. He's one that looks like he's had a bit of a breakthrough performance there, and 3 big 5-setters and not doing himself any shame in the process. So really interesting to see that. Tarek maybe had the shine taken off him in the round before, sneaking past Paul Cole, the Kiwi, who was the qualifier, 17-15 in the 5th, 101-minute match. And I managed to catch bits of it, and both players were literally just collapsed in the corner by the end of it, an absolute beast. So yeah, I think maybe Tarek was just a bit off, and Greg had a 5-setter, but 11-9 in the 5th, that can go either way.
Yeah, I was talking about Paul Cole to one of my opponents last week, and I don't think he'd ever seen the player before, and he was absolutely astonished by his ability. Looking good for Gregoire Marche, as you said. We'll jump forward to the quarterfinals and talk about his match with Nick, and he did go 2 love up, which I don't think you'd have predicted that to start with, but credit to Nick, he battled back in the 3rd and 4th and eventually took it in the 5th.
Yeah, just that's experience. That's the holy grail of what a lot of players are trying to achieve. Just to be able to be 2 love down. Nick nicks the 3rd, 12-10, and then 11-8 in the 4th. I can just imagine Gregoire's kind of state of mind by that point was like, oh, here we go. Like Nick Matthews just starting to turn the screw, just going through the gears. But Nick is such a battler, such a warrior. He's been there many, many times, and just because of his age and the times he's been there, I think that's what saw him through that match. So, but again, Nick having a big 5-setter, first round, and then again in the quarterfinals, probably didn't give himself much left in the tank by the semi-finals when he had to play Mohamed Elshorbagy.
Yeah, and if we look at Shobagi's match, he was taken to 5 by Simon Rosner, which 79 minutes of tough squash, and you had some outrageous rallies. Demonstrated by the most recent Mega Rallies video from PSA Squash TV on the YouTube channel. I watched that this morning and was astounded by just Rosner's athleticism, always pushing the top players to their limit.
Yeah, Simon, he's almost like the Nearly man. It's a horrible way to kind of describe him because he's achieved great things in the game, but he just almost needs to get that win against someone in the top 4, top 5 to really kind of get his momentum going. Losing 11-9 in the 5th against Mohamed Elshorbagy, 79-minute beast of a match. And yeah, I think Simon was saying how well he thought he was playing that week, and especially against James. I think Simon said that's probably the best match he's ever played. He couldn't ask or couldn't script a better match, and it looks like he took it over in Shobagi's match. But just that ability to win, I suppose it just comes down to the nuts and bolts of that. He needs to win a match like that to be able to really then jump into the top 5, top 6 at some point. So wish him luck, because I think a lot of people like his style of game and like what he does, and hopefully he'll be able to kind of get over the line soon. Just looking at, again, Daryl Selby, took out Cameron Pilley, continuing his good run in recent tournaments. He's really looks like he's hit his form at the World Open, and then this one, really pushing Ramy 3-1 and getting into the semi-finals. A 3-1 match, 12-10 in the fourth though, 70-minute, pretty big stuff there. But yeah, again, Daryl just finding that lease of life in the last two tournaments. Coming towards Christmas time, he looks fresh as anything. He's had a second kid now, really settled down. I think all of that is playing into his hands.
Yeah, it's really great to see that resurgence in his career. The final game of the quarterfinals was Goward versus Marwan Elshorbagy, and this one seemed almost a formality for Goward, even though he did drop a game. He sort of snuck through with a fairly easy match overall.
Yeah, look at the round before, Gawad, I think he's becoming known as the five-setter man these days, just getting past Zahid Mohamed. I say just 11th in the final game in the fifth, 57 minutes. And yeah, maybe Marwan might have sniffed something there. Marwan beat Ryan Kaskeli 3-love the round before. But yeah, again, I think just looking at what Gawad, how he started the season, current world champion, not a massive surprise beating Marwan Elshorbagy. And I think that was what I mentioned in the last squash cast, was the weight of the world championships on Gawad's shoulder. A match like that could have gone the other way. And actually credit to him for, dropping a game and then, coming out and being pretty ruthless in the last two games. So yeah, he's wearing that crown of world champion pretty well so far by the looks of it. And I think is testament to his character and how relaxed of a person he is. He just seems to be taking it all in his stride.
Yeah, he's looked fantastically calm and efficient during his matches, so he can go those 5 sets without being too much taken out of him for the next match. So we move on to the semi-finals, and we'll start with Goward versus Selby, because this first game was possibly one of the best matches I've seen Daryl Selby play, taking it the first game 16-14 in 19 minutes. So not the longest game we saw all tournament, but it was a fantastic performance to take the world champion to that level.
I agree. I think Daryl for that first game and a half was arguably the better player. He was the one, not better. He was playing the bigger points just a bit better. Sneaking the first and nip and tuck all the way through the second game. But again, the current world champion probably knows how to kind of change his game up and then turn the screw a little bit. There must be probably at least 5, if not 7 years gap between the two players in age. So, Daryl maybe just had a bit in his legs, and yeah, I think Daryl's natural movement maybe got a bit exposed by Gawad towards the end. Gawad finding those angles, finding the front of the court like he does. But again, really impressive from Daryl. And me, for one, I predicted Daryl to win that. Again, maybe I was basing it on Karim having the pressure of the world championship or world champion on his shoulders, Daryl probably hitting his best form, arguably in the last 10 years. That could have been a nice one for Daryl to kind of take it. And as I said, I'd seen Daryl a week or two before playing, and he did. He looked different in a real positive way, just so sure of himself, so confident of what he was doing. So, but again, credit to the world champion. He came out, tweaked a few things, changed his game up, and just showed what he's made of.
Yeah, the match overall was over in 50 minutes, so it only took 30 minutes for Goward to win those next 3 games. Looking at the other semi-final, this was possibly the best match of the entire week, with a real classic match of Mohamed Elshorbagy versus Nick Matthew. And we've seen this fixture many times in the PSA World Tour, and I think there's always that excitement to see these two play. They've had a bit of animosity over the last few years. It's sort of calmed away a little bit more recently, but this was an 83-minute match of absolute hell, it seemed like, for the two of them.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely brutal. Shorbagy, Nick Matthew, it must be for the last maybe 4 or 5 years. I think they've had a real strong rivalry together. Nick in the early stages showing his older statesman, so to speak, nicking those ones. And, Shorbagy, when he became world number 1, seemed to get the better of Nick. But this was, rewind the clock 3, 4, 5 years, and Nick Matthew just looked so good, just such a pity he couldn't win it. And look at the scores, 8-11, 9-11, 11-9, 11-4, 11-9, absolutely brilliant. Nick going 2-love up again, and then, there was a bit of controversy, and I think I read Nick's tweets about maybe a decision here, a decision there. And I think Nick very quickly followed it up saying, well, he can't really rely on just one decision swing in the course of a match. arguably you could, because it was such a big point at that moment, and you could tell Nick was a little bit bitter by it. And I think it had such a bearing on the match that, Nick 2-love up, and I think it was, I can't remember the top of my head, but I think he was 1 or 2 points ahead in the third as well, and there was a little bit of an interesting decision around the front backhand that could have gone Nick's way. It was probably the right call, but I think Nick saw that and it just maybe exaggerated his feelings about it. And then like Elshorbagy clawing it back and a massive 11-9 finish in the fifth game, Mohamed seeing that one out, that was definitely one for the ages, and probably one of those matches where I'll definitely download it and look to keep it, and use it as a reference, because there was that balance between really pure squash and then really kind of attacking modern open squash as well. So it kind of had everything, which was fantastic to see in the semi-finals.
Yeah, great way to finish the semi-finals as well. And we look at the final now with Mohamed Elshorbagy versus Kareem Abdel-Gawad, and I think if you just plainly looked at the result of 3-love, you'd say that Elshorbagy had a lot taken out of him in the earlier rounds. He had a lot of 3-2s, but when you actually look at how long the games took and the score in each of the games, and then look at the match itself, it's difficult to say that that's actually a factor, because the first two games were incredibly close, very long rallies, very long games.
Yeah, I think the first two games were about 25 minutes, so about 50 minutes, over 50 minutes for the first couple of games, which is massive. And again, really interesting to see that someone like Gawad really kind of testing Elshorbagy physically. And by the end, I think Gawad, not only his shots won it, I think he really took all the edge off Elshorbagy. Elshorbagy's movement in the last game was completely compromised. He wasn't moving naturally. He was taking that extra step to get to the ball, stumbling through a few balls in the front. So in regard to physicality, I definitely think it had a part to play, but not necessarily maybe in the first game and a half. But with Gawad able to turn that screw, that was really impressive. What I found interesting as well was that second game, that momentum shift that happened with Gawad, I believe, was 9-5 up at one point, and then all of a sudden it was like 10-9 game point to Elshorbagy with 5 unanswered points. And you'd say at that point, well, okay, here's Elshorbagy now. This is the real Elshorbagy stood up. And again, it just that inner resolve that Gawad found, managed to kind of just get that 1 point back, to take it to 10-all, and then, able to kind of exchange points and see out that second game, which could have been the difference. Elshorbagy coming off, winning that 11-9 arguably, bit of momentum, maybe the tiredness doesn't come into it as much. I think Elshorbagy would have been really buzzing to kind of go in at 1-all and go, right, here we go. I'm really starting to ask questions of him, but it wasn't to be. And again, Gawad finding this inner resolve, this inner mental fortitude that he seems to have had since the start of the season, whether it's because his physical program is that much better, whether he's just more confident with his style of play, not too sure yet, but all credit to him. And still, Mohamed, let's not forget, Mohamed Elshorbagy is still the world number one. It's no mean feat to become the world number one, and someone like Gawad really really kind of showing him little respect in that regard. He's playing the world number one, so what? He's going to get on and do what he needs to do. So super impressive from Gawad, and man, I think this rivalry, I think a few people have mentioned it, is one to watch for the next 5-6 years. I think Rob, you mentioned it in the last squash cast. They're both the same age, I think mid-20s, maybe 26, I don't quite know off the top of my head. And if they keep going like this is going to be one for the ages. Going to be, it's almost like interesting to see debates. Is Gawad more of the modern game again? Has he come in and changed the game a little bit? Elshorbagy was definitely one of those 4 or 5 years ago where he changed the game, the brutal pace, what he was doing to the ball and moving it around. And actually Gawad's come and actually nullified that and changed it up again. So it'd be interesting to see how they kind of swing back and forward over the next few tournaments and next few years.
Yeah, absolutely. And considering they are the same age, this rivalry could last for 5, 6, 7 years until either one of them retires. That third game was a bit of a formality for Gawad. It was only 7 minutes long, and it seemed sort of halfway through that Elshorbagy just was deflated. He's 2-love down. He's had a very long week, and he didn't really have an answer to anything that Gawad played. So a fantastic tournament overall. Just got a couple of questions for you, unless you've got something else to say.
Well, just quite disappointing in the crowds. Early on tournament or early on matches, not much. There was a good crowd for Al Tamimi, the local boy, but I think even in the quarters and the semis, there was not many people there, and really disappointing because it's such a stadium for squash that it's designed so well. I've been lucky enough to play there a few times myself, and definitely not many people watch me, so I didn't get any of that feeling of what it should feel like in a final. But it's such a shame. But hey, it was good to see the final that completely packed out. I think every Egyptian in Qatar and their close friends and family turned up to that final. But Qatar do such a big promotion of it. It's in the newspapers. It looks amazing, and the couple of times I've been, you feel like you treated so well, and there's posters around the town and on billboards. But yeah, I can't quite put my finger on why they're not getting the crowds there for those early rounds. Maybe they've been so spoiled with squash. They've had so much good squash that they're only going to be there for the final bits. And compared to what it looked like in the World Open, it was pretty disappointing to see the crowds.
Yeah, real shame. But that can be quite common with especially early rounds with squash tournaments. But people really want to go and see the big names as they get deeper into the tournaments. So I just wanted to get your opinion on what do you think is setting Gawad apart from the other players right now?
There's something just about his extremities. What I mean by that, he can go from really hard hitting and really kind of like straight lines, and then mix it up with the most delicate, deft touch, So that's what I think is he's better than the other players at the moment. When he gets to the front of the court, as we've heard, people just don't know where the ball's going. I think you mentioned it to me the other day. There's almost that surprise element. You see the players on the tee going, where's this going? This could be coming in at 1,000 miles an hour, being pumped to the back, or it could be the most delicate little quick trickle boast that you just don't see. And the players are rocking and rolling pretty much every time he's shaping up to hit a shot, and it's so impressive to see how he does it. And unconventional, I wouldn't say he's the most stylish player. I know that might sound controversial, but you look at someone like Elshorbagy, you'd say, wow, beautiful style and fluid. And Gawad just doesn't seem as stylish, but the effect he's having on the ball and the effect he has on his opponent's movement is absolutely like I've not seen it before. He is really quick, deceptively quick. When he decides he wants to go to the front of the court and he's read the game, he is on that ball so quick. So his speed of movement on there, but that definitely has to be linked into his awareness of the game, how he sees the game, how he reads the game. He's moving onto balls with a bit of a calculated guess, a bit of a calculated risk, and he's doing it so effectively that the players are so shocked by what's going on. So I don't know, compare him to someone like Miguel Rodriguez, maybe not as well, definitely not as kind of maybe naturally quick, but Miguel would probably be a bit more kind of random, tossing the coin in the air and seeing what's coming down, whereas Gawad, I think, just reads it that much better. So he's moving onto it and really kind of knows where the ball's going, plus the added extremities he has in his game, the quick hitting, the real snappy shots, and then the deft touch. That's my opinion of what's separating him at the moment, and it'll be interesting to see how that can be combated at some point.
Yeah, and it's really good to watch that kind of deception, because even as a spectator, you're trying to figure out what he's going to do, and not being in the game, you've got a little bit more time to watch the replays and sort of notice the subtleties. What do you think other players need to do to overcome this well, let's say dominance?
I'll let the players come to me. I've got my own secret, and no, I'm joking. I've got not that I've got no idea, but I think most players are scratching their head at the moment. I'm sure a lot of people are watching videos of what he's doing, and even the commentators said that they're quite surprised how often he catches people out with that trickle boast in the front backhand. So, he's surprised a lot of people. He surprised us. He surprised the commentators of how much he's burst onto it at the beginning of the season. I don't think anyone would bet a lot of money saying he would have been the world champion and won the Qatar Classic immediately afterwards. Not saying he will get worked out, but other players are smart. They'll adapt. They will rein him in at some point. There's still something that I would like to see him be tested physically. I know that people have, and they can take him to 5 sets and that, but actually kind of stretching out his movement, getting him twisting and turning, getting him twitchy on the tee, getting him not sure where it's going. I don't think anyone's doing that at the moment. Someone like Mohamed Elshorbagy is raw. He's like raw power, raw brutal ability, but that doesn't really test Gawad's movement in like where's this ball going kind of way. So, I'd probably like to see someone not mimic Garwad's style, but have a little element of where you can plant doubt into his movement and stretch him around the court. How that gets done, I'm not sure yet, but in my opinion, that's what I would probably suggest to see how someone can kind of take that dominance away.
Anyone you think would be best at implementing that kind of tactic?
I don't know, someone even like a James Willstrop, if I'm honest, if he gets it right and can really start to kind of get his hold, his disguise, and then onto the ball quick and mix it up. I think if he gets the balance right in his game, and again, not not maybe a massive threat at the moment, inverted commas, look, he has been world number one before James, but his style of play maybe mixed in with a bit more kind of raw power and raw aggression would be really interesting to see, because when James gets his lines going and his accuracy and his holding, there's no one better in the world. That's his training. He does drop and drive for hours and hours and hours, and he's hitting such fine targets. So it'd be interesting to see if James can kind of get himself, or he's in good shape, but kind of get himself against Garwad at some point, and actually James's best game against Garwad's best game. That would be a real interesting matchup.
Yeah, I'd definitely love to see that going forward. So we're going to look at just a few tournaments coming up in the next few weeks. We've got the Women's World Teams in Paris in November, followed by the British Grand Prix held in Manchester at the end of November. Now that's a 70k tournament, so that's going to have a lot of the big names. But we also have an interesting one that we noticed before we started recording, which is the Channel VAS at St George's Hill. Now this is possibly the biggest tournament in Europe with 100k. Not everybody in the top 10 is going to be at this tournament.
Yeah, listen, great few tournaments coming up before Christmas time. Women's World Teams, around the corner, followed up by the British Grand Prix in Manchester. That's always started to, well, not started, but that's always been a really attractive event. Not the hugest prize money, but it does attract a lot of the top seeds. And then looking at the Channel VAS, just down the road from where we're recording this in Weybridge, like a fantastic club, real traditional English club, all whites kind of clothing, and it's beautiful. And to have $100,000 event down the road is fantastic. It's been sponsored by one of the members, I believe, who owns Channel VAS, and all the proceeds are going to the Click Sergeant Children's Charity Foundation, which is fantastic. So he's inputting all this money in and actually not taking anything back. And just looking at the top seeds, Garwad is an obvious one that's not there. Mohamed Elshorbagy is the number 1 seed and Omar Mossad the 2 seed. So on paper, you'd look at that and you go, this is one surely for Mohamed Elshorbagy to really kind of get his teeth stuck into. If it goes to seeding, Mohamed Elshorbagy should reach up or should come across Miguel Rodriguez in the semi-finals. But again, Miguel's form has been a bit iffy of late, and Miguel probably has to get past Matthew Castagna at some point. So, be interesting to see. I think it slightly looks quite even across the board, but I could see this being quite a standard tournament in that kind of form.
Yeah, and I certainly think if Elshorbagy can find the form he found in the Qatar Classic, I know he didn't win in the end, but he did play solidly throughout. That I think that should be his for the taking. The big tournament coming up is the Tournament of Champions in January 10th. So that's a big player's favourite tournament, and certainly the location itself is pretty stunning.
Yeah, one of the greatest tournaments out there, with the backdrop of Grand Central Station, how it's organized. John Nimmick been doing it for many years. Everyone loves it to bits. So I'm sure the players over the Christmas time are going to be a bit frugal with their alcohol and their partying. Maybe not like the England football team, but they'll be trying to peak at that tournament, I'm sure. But listen, we're so spoiled for tournaments at the moment. In the next squash cast, I'm sure we'll be talking about a few of these events, and just depends when we can get time to record. We'll definitely do something before the Tournament of Champions, and it just looks so exciting at the moment, and this is the real peak time for the squash season. And this is where the movers and shakers might start to take place. Garwad is really putting his name in there for world number 1 position. Can Mohamed Elshorbagy do something at the British Grand Prix and the Channel VAS? Yeah, and we'll just have to see where it goes from here. So keep watching. I know we're going to be watching loads over the next few tournaments. And yeah, if you're liking what we're kind of saying here, please do help support, and please do help kind of spread the word about it, because we really enjoy kind of recording these.
Yeah, and we've been very lucky that there's been a few tournaments in a row so that we were able to record these podcasts for such big events. Thank you very much for listening this week. Don't forget you can find us on all the usual places: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram and Twitter. We will see you next time, hopefully before the Tournament Champions, but if not, around the 20th of January next year. Thank you very much and see you next time.